Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Brown, and I'm the Director of Communications at Digital Undivided. We're so excited to have all of you here with us to commemorate Juneteenth with our very first Undivided We Rise Summit. Digital Undivided's mission is to create pathways of economic opportunity and to catalyze genius in Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs. We essentially want to create a world where all women own their work. We create programs, we conduct data and research, and we make investments in women of color in innovation and entrepreneurship. I want to take the time to acknowledge all of you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we're honored to have you here. We're honored that you've chosen to spend time with us, building community at our very first summit. And so as we give attendees an opportunity to filter in and join us, please take a moment and leave us a comment in the comment box below, letting us know where you're joining us from. We'll be taking live questions from our comment section, so please feel free to engage with us there. We're also taking questions on social media, so feel free to follow us at Digital Undivided. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and at digitalundiv on Twitter, DIGUNDIV on Twitter. Use the hashtag UndividedWeRise, and feel free to tell your networks and your friends about this summit so we can all share and grow through this entire experience. I'm super excited. We've been working really hard on this summit for the past few weeks, and I just know it's going to be an incredible time, for us to join together and learn and grow with each other. So before we kick things off, I'd like to introduce our Interim CEO, Lauren Maillian. Lauren is a change agent committed to diversity, innovation, and inclusion. She has made her mark in the industry as a consumer brand strategist, an award-winning marketer, an author, and a tech startup investor and advisor. We're incredibly honored at Digital Undivided to have her at the helm of our leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Lauren Maillian.
Hi, I'm Lauren Maillian, CEO of Digital Undivided. I want to thank you for joining us today for our very first virtual summit, Undivided We Rise. There has not been a better, more momentous time for Black and Latinx women as entrepreneurs than now. And I am so excited to be able to welcome you to this space, for us to convene, for us to fellowship, and most importantly, for us to be together in community, in really dynamic, transformative conversation that will help guide you as a leader and an innovator into spaces for the future as you continue forging new paths. Today, I am also so honored to be able to lead our very first conversation and moderate our panel on funding during this time, both right after COVID-19 and also the racial tensions that we have lived through. The funding environment, while really ripe in so many ways, and there's so much opportunity for women of color, there is still such an uphill battle getting funding for your big ideas. And we know because at Digital Undivided, the Project Diane research report shows us the disparity in the funds that women of color are able to raise against the industry average. And today I'm so honored and excited to be able to bring to you Olivia Owens, the general manager and creator of I Fund Women of Color, and Cheraé Robinson, the founder of Tastemakers Africa, in conversation with me on what this time means for them as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as founders, and also women who are so intimately involved in the fundraising landscape at this moment in time. Stay tuned.
So, when we talk about funding, certainly COVID-19 has made the funding landscape so different. It is always really difficult for women of color to raise money. We know from our own research here at Digital Undivided through our Project Diane biennial research report that Black and Latinx women on average raise $42,000, which compares to the 1.1 million that is often raised as the first round from startups. And we are here to change that. We are here to make sure that you are equipped with the resources and all that you need to really survive in that competitive landscape. I'm so thrilled to be able to have Olivia Owens here with me from I Fund Women of Color and Cheraé Robinson of Tastemakers Africa, who each have contributed so much to this landscape and to its future. And I want to just really kick it off by asking, what does this moment doing to the funding landscape in general, especially for women of color?
Absolutely. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I think it's so important that we talk about these issues. The work that we do at iFund Women is provide access to capital for women founders. I was the first hire there and have been coaching women from the beginning. And my mom actually crowdfunded, which is how I was originally introduced to the organization. And so I've seen crowdfunding work for women of color, but I also recognized when I was coaching founders, there was a deeper hesitation when I was coaching women of color founders, whether that stemmed from a discomfort with asking for support and asking for help with your crowdfunding campaign, or not feeling like you had a strong enough network to be able to reach out to raise that capital. And I think what we've seen with COVID-19 is an even stronger push towards accessing alternative funding options with the mini grant programs that have been launched in the past few months. And then also with so many women coming to our platform who are so in need of this capital. And so we've really doubled down and pushed out the resources that our entrepreneurs need to be able to understand how to position a crowdfunding campaign, how to reach out to your network, how to leverage this tool. And I think we're going to see a continued push towards these alternative options, even for months to come.
And let me just follow up with a quick question there for you as well, Olivia. Why in the first place I fund women of color, right?
Absolutely.
There was something you saw there.
There absolutely was. It was that hesitation that I saw, but also the success on the other side. And so my task working in an organization where I do have influence, I do have the ability to create opportunity for women like me. It was, how can I help women of color see themselves through the lens of crowdfunding? How can we make this tool feel more accessible? And immediately in launching the platform, I was talking to women who said, I knew about iFund Women, but then I saw iFund Women of Color and I knew that was for me. And so I think the more we can create platforms like Digital Undivided, like iFund Women of Color, that create space for us and really tap into those unique needs that we have, the stronger we're going to be and the further we're going to get with our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cheraé, what is women of color interesting journey, having worked with the CDC and the World Health Organization, and then kind of pivoting in so many ways to becoming an entrepreneur and launching your company. And it's so interesting what you do. It's so important for the culture, right? Which is through Tastemakers Africa, you're able to connect travelers with real life influencers and people on the ground in local countries to be able to have the most authentic travel experience possible, which is something that every person wants, especially to Africa, right? You want to be able to see through a genuine and authentic lens and feel like you got your real, true experience. Now that tourism is really at a halt, if you could just speak to us a bit about what is that doing to your business?
Yeah, I mean, first, thank you all for having me. The entire tourism industry is rethinking where it is and what does travel look like post COVID-19. And then on top of it, sort of as a venture-backed platform, looking at the market in Africa, where it took a long time to even convince investors that this was a market we should be going after. I think when COVID first happened, there was a bit of shock. I think at first we sort of were like, oh, this will be like a small pause and we'll just get back to doing what we were doing. But I'm very fortunate that one of our investors was the CEO at Expedia for 20 years. And so we kind of were able to have a conversation along with Jamie Wong, who's one of our board members and was a big time travel viable at one point. We had to have a really hard conversation about what the business was going to be post-COVID. Thankfully, I had raised at the end of 2019. So I didn't have an immediate cash flow issue in the short term, but I knew that I could not operate the business the way I wanted to in the long term. So my plan post-close was hire people, expand the team, hire senior executives that were Black and brown people in this now venture-backed startup. None of that could happen. Like, all of that had to go on pause. But what was beautiful in the moment was, because Tastemakers had to build so scrappy in the beginning, we had built this incredible community. So although the initial feeling was shock, there was also relief that we could actually invest in the sort of the worry of converting them immediate to revenue. So there was like first shock and then relief, but we also had incredible investors to guide us through that first, 2 weeks post the US locking down and borders closing.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I think that for every entrepreneur, you're constantly finding ways to be oftentimes reactive and responsive. And we think about everything else in terms of maybe messaging or marketing, but we don't think about something that really takes, the wind out of our sail in so many ways. So I'm going to come back to you for some other questions on what you're doing in the future going forward. Now, Olivia, I would love to hear from you as well. What do you see as some trends happening now, especially with funding opportunities for women of color? What is your take on what it's doing to the industry from both more traditional funding sources with VCs and seasoned angel investors versus maybe some trends that you might be seeing now on your platform?
Yeah, so I think conversation that we're having with entrepreneurs in our community right now is, how are our businesses thriving in this next normal? And I think our ability to take this time to answer that question, exactly what Cheraé was just talking about, and anticipate those things from potential investors that we're talking to and so forth, is what's going to help us win. But I also think we've seen a shift in people paying attention to Black-owned businesses and being more thoughtful about where they're spending their money. And then so I think, again, the responsibility falls on us to make it super easy for people to find us, and super easy for people to be able to support us. And so that's why we've seen so many women come to our platform to launch crowdfunding campaigns, because they have people in their network, people in their community who are saying, how can I support you? How can I support you? And I think the amazing thing about crowdfunding is that it opens up this opportunity for you to even reach outside of your target customer, because there may be people out there who want to support you, want to see your business win, but they don't necessarily need your product. And so crowdfunding becomes a way where you can either offer them something unique that adds value to them in some way in exchange for their cash, or they can just directly contribute to your business, no questions asked. And so I think our ability to have an answer when somebody says, okay, how can I help you, is what's going to be so important in being able to push our businesses forward. And we're definitely seeing a trend in pivots. It has to happen. So from clothing lines pivoting to making face masks. One of the companies that we've been seeing do really well is a home cleaning company, and she's in a position where she's overwhelmed with demand and trying to figure it out. And so I think we're all going through our unique problem comes an opportunity. And so it's really figuring out how we're going to capitalize on the opportunity that's in front of us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And would you think or say that it is accurate, perhaps, that also through crowdfunding, you're able to see who has the interest in investing, right? Because what I've observed over the years is that there are a lot of people who want to, but they don't meet the requirements, the accredited investor requirements or what have you. And so they look for these other opportunities where they can show support in different ways.
Totally agree with that. So we are on the rewards-based crowdfunding side of it. There is equity-based crowdfunding where people can invest in and get ownership into the company. For us, it's just cash. And I think for people who are looking to get into angel investing or whatever it is, rewards-based crowdfunding is a really good place to go and see, well, what are the trends that are happening? Who are the founders out there in the landscape that are winning? And it becomes this entry-level point where you can start building a relationship with the founder at the earliest stages, and then be one of their first investors when they do look to access follow-on capital. So definitely crowdfunding becomes kind of that sourcing ground. And we view it as a tool to be able to prove demand for your product or service before you invest in supply. Because our biggest thing is we don't want you going into debt funding the earliest days of your startup. And crowdfunding is a low risk way to be able to test it out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, Cheraé, in complete contrast to that, you have just raised at the end of 2019 in October a $1.6 million funding round, and now you're venture back. So congratulations! That is such a milestone for our community, such a milestone for Black women, and for the industry. So I would just love for you to share with us a bit on what was that like for you as a founder raising. And how would you feel about having to raise now? But let's start with, what was that like for you to go out and raise such a substantial amount of money as your first funding round?
It was, I think, difficult is a word that's sort of the obvious one, but I think in many ways it was an exercise in being relentless. That's the best way to describe raising money. I think in many ways, while the actual raise took a couple of months, when I think about the network and the time it took to be able to build the network to actually fundraise, that was years in the making, right? So planting those seeds and building those relationships took me so much time. And it was literally 3 years of building Tastemakers unfunded, meeting people, getting 50,000 from an angel investor here, pipeline angels investing here, folks on the continent investing, winning startup competition. So it took all that time and network building to be able to then say, okay, I'm going to do this. And I laugh. I tell the story of Eric Blackford, who was one of the investors in our most recent round. I messaged him on LinkedIn when I first had the idea for Tastemakers almost 5 years ago. And for 4 years, once a year, I sent him a LinkedIn message with no reply. And then for whatever reason, last September, he replied. And I was actually asking him to introduce me to somebody else. I had given up on the idea that he would back my company. And so he replies, he says, we should talk for 30 minutes before I do this intro for you. And I was just like, what? Like, this guy replied. And I sent him my deck and he was like, actually, let's talk for an hour. And I was like, oh, that's a good sign. And before I could email him the thank you note, he had already emailed me telling me he's going to do 250,000 in the round. And when should I send the wire? And this was before I had even closed the round. He was ready to send the wire. And so I tell that story because that was 4 years. That check took 4 years of LinkedIn messages. And he was able to then Google me and see an article in TechCrunch or in Condé Nast so it was a lot of time before I was able to run the same kind of fundraising process that my peers who are not Black women run. And I got to have a lot of conversations, though. I think a lot of times people share these horror stories of what happens to you as a woman founder, what happens to you as a Black founder in the room. But for me, it was more about the work to get in the room. That was the longest part of the journey. And I mean, I had 70 meetings to raise my round, phone meetings, in-person meetings, 70 on a list of 200. So I think a lot of times people are talking to the same 10 investors and wondering why they're not closing their round. 70 meetings. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I've been in this space since 2011. And, it is a lot of time building those networks. And then people see, and you finally completed
your fundraising round, but they have no idea how long it took, how many unanswered messages, how many, I mean, I've heard so many stories. I've seen, entrepreneurs do it, but that's what you do when you are, as you said before, relentless, right? Like that persistence is ingrained in you when you want something so bad. And what I've also found, and it sounds like you found this in an investor as well, is that they often even watch how persistent you are because most people don't want it that bad, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they even our largest investor was someone I met. A lot of people are like dragging VCs for doing office hours, but the largest investor in our round came from a diversity office hours moment 2 years ago. And so when I was put back in touch with them, getting the biggest check and have been amazing in us navigating the COVID space and launching a new product as a result of the things we've learned in this time. So it is, you get that no and you think it's a hard no. And you think it's like nonsense when people say, no, it's not, like you think that's just something nice to say. But 75% of the investors in my round were people I had some sort of interaction with at some point along the journey. And it just came together. Like when it came together quickly. It was like 30 days by the time I got that September yes, I was done October 31st.
Yeah.
Like cash in the bank.
That's amazing. And we are so proud of you. And I want to open it up now for some questions. I believe we have some questions coming in. And Olivia, I'd love to also ask you, are you seeing any financial trends on the platform? Are you seeing, any silver linings to this moment in time that we're in, especially on I Fund Women of Color, focusing on women of color? Are you seeing additional monies raised that your kind of average campaign is bringing in some different figures?
Absolutely. The reality is people are shelling out cash for Black-owned businesses right now. And I think, again, capitalize on it. We had a campaign on our platform who was set out to raise $25K. The company is Dive In Well. They're focused on diversity in the wellness space. And this moment is so relevant to her business. And what she was able to do is she created this ebook, digital download, focused on how to bring diversity into the wellness space, and it's selling like gangbusters. She doubled her initial raise amount, and it still continues to raise. And so I think the more that we can kind of pivot, create the tools that speak to the moment right now, and push our campaigns out there, we're definitely seeing a trend towards higher raises.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy. I mean, that's if there's anything that we can take out of this moment in time, it is the spotlight that it shines on Black and Latinx women, especially Black women, and those who we serve here at Digital Undivided. And so I think one of the most difficult things as well, even for us as an organization, has been supporting each other and how you feel personally in these moments, and also still kind of wrapping your head around and making sure that you still have that relentless spirit to go after what is now maybe possible for your business, whether that be funding or exposure, but making sure that we also seize this opportunity in time, because we've been waiting a long time to have this opportunity and this spotlight, and in many ways this momentum. This is not the way any of us would want to have this momentum, but recognizing that now is the time where at least our voices are heard, or maybe those emails get returned a little faster, or meetings scheduled quicker, or anything just kind of accelerated in your favor, in our favor. So, Cheraé, we have a question for you that's come in around press, which is also really important for women of color in order to be heard, right? And that exposure can often do a lot for us in our business. So the question is, Cheraé, how did you get your Condé Nast feature?
This is going to sound so horrible, but my Condé Nast feature literally just showed up in my inbox. Like they just emailed me. Like I till now, I don't know how they found us. Like we only recently started using like an agency, and that's been a big learning experience for me. But prior to that, like I didn't have time to do like finding press. Like I had no time for that. So for us, it was like, I think we just did the work and we were operating in a space nobody else was. And so I think over time that becomes hard to ignore. And I think I personally would advise that founders just do the business of your business and do it well and do it exceptionally well and do it better than anybody else before you hire an agency, because you know your business better than anybody else. And at the earliest stages, you don't have a lot of time to try to like manage onboarding somebody else into your business. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I think if you're tackling a problem that not a lot of people are, as many Black and brown founders are, because we're seeing the world of business in different ways, people will notice you over time. And I think building real community and delivering a great product is going to do more for your business than an article, even though an article feels like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always what I've observed over the years. And this is just across startups, regardless of who's creating them and the founding team behind them, is that it's always, someone always has a different philosophy on if you go first for substance or first for being seen and having that kind of press exposure. And often it is keeping your head down, doing the work and having something to show for it so that when you make a splash of any kind, you can absolutely back it up. So that's wonderful advice. So thank you for that, Cheraé. Olivia, question for you. What are people looking for when crowdfunding right now?
Yeah, so a lot of the coaching that we do directly maps to what Cheraé was sharing in terms of how she fundraised for her business. That relentlessness is so key. And also not being afraid to hear no. So often a no can simply mean not right now, or no, I can't show up for you in that specific way, but are there other options in a way that I can show up for you? And so I think when you're thinking about launching a crowdfunding campaign right now, what people want to know is, what exactly are these funds going to do for you? How is this going to impact your business? Are you going to be able to cover your rent for the next 3 months? Are you going to be able to hire 3 new people on your team? And I think this is relevant for both crowdfunding and applying for grants as well. So often if you apply for a grant that's $5,000 and you in your application, you're talking about how you need $10,000 to be able to do this next thing with your business, they're going to wonder, oh, well, $5,000 wouldn't be enough impact for her. So let's see if there's somebody else who $5,000 would actually have that massive impact for. And so I think the more that we can be super transparent about how we're going to use these funds is going to be key. And then I think for crowdfunding, it also comes back to how are you adding value to this person in some way? And we really like to think outside of the box of just selling your product service, but what are content, experiences, access to education that you can offer, whether you're raising funds for a tech app, but in your past career, you're a marketing expert, and there are other entrepreneurs in your network who you can sell marketing consultations to. They might not need the app, but they need your services. And so your ability to evaluate your network, what are kind of the different buckets of it, entrepreneurs, fellow moms, colleagues, and then understand the value that you can add to each of those people, then sell them that thing. I think that's kind of the sweet spot that we've seen in terms of crowdfunding.
Amazing. Thank you. And I want to thank you ladies for joining us. Olivia and Cheraé, thank you so much. This has been such an important conversation. We know from our own research here at Digital Undivided, on average, $42,000 goes to women of color, and we hope to be able to change that. We hope our research looks very different in the future because of both this time that we're in right now and the conversation that we had today with each of you. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Digital Undivided, we thank you, the team, and I know that our community really appreciates these insights at such a critical time when everyone is looking for, in many ways, the path of least resistance to get funding and also to get exposure. So thank you for joining us, and take care. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Wow, so many gems were dropped in that last session. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists for sharing your insight on how entrepreneurs should approach funding in this new climate. Here at Digital Undivided, we are really committed to encouraging Black and Latinx women to own their economic security through entrepreneurship and innovation. If you believe in our mission and want to do your part in redefining the economic landscape of Black and Latinx women across the globe, I want to encourage you right now to donate to Digital Undivided's mission. No matter the amount, your investment truly makes a difference. You can make a donation at digitalundivided.com/donate. The link will also be provided in the chat, and we have a QR code that you can scan that will bring you straight to our donation page. We really, really appreciate your support. The only way that Digital Undivided is able to push this work forward and make our mission a reality is with the support of our community. So we really appreciate it. All right, next up, we're diving deep into perfecting the pivot and embracing change. If there's one thing this global pandemic has taught us, it's that we need to know when and how to pivot our businesses and our careers for continued success. No one understands that like our next set of panelists. But first, let me introduce our amazing moderator. Ahyiana is the founder of UjuuMedia, a podcast production company, and host of the personal growth podcast, Switch, Pivot, or Quit. She's also a published author and speaker, and her book, Quit Playing Small, is the latest buzzed about book that is a must-have for ambitious women and their morning routine. There's no better moderator for this conversation than Ahyiana because she's curated her entire platform around telling the stories of women of color who have successfully switched, pivoted, or quit. Everyone, please welcome to the stage Ahyiana Angel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Perfecting the Pivot and Embracing Change panel. During this pandemic, founders are not only rethinking funding, but many need to be creative with generating revenue, maintaining customers, and refining business processes. The panel that we're going to speak to today will uncover how and why founders should switch, pivot, or quit. And as you know, I'm Ahyiana Angel, the host of the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast, so let's get into it. First, we're going to meet Kelechi. Kelechi is a seasoned business leader who built multi-million-dollar fashion company within 3 short years. Her ability to tell engaging stories using digital marketing strategies garnered her recognition from Forbes 30 Under 30, and she has pitched on ABC's Shark Tank and has traveled around the world conducting workshops on digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Jihan, our other panelist, is Jihan Thompson. She is the co-founder and CEO of Swivel Beauty, the beauty marketplace solely dedicated to helping Black women find and book vetted, talented stylists who are skilled at working with textured hair, either relaxed or natural. Prior to launching Swivel Beauty, Jihan spent nearly a decade as a magazine editor at top women's magazines, including Oprah Magazine, Marie Claire, and Glamour. Welcome to this panel, ladies. How are you?
Great.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we are excited about this conversation because we need to know how to pivot in this time that we're in right now with all of this uncertainty and everything. So the first question that I want to get into and topic we want to talk about is each of you are successful startup founders who have found a way to either switch business activities, pivot into different industries or business services, or quit one completely and shift to another career path. So tell us about a moment in your journey prior to the pandemic when you made the decision to pivot and why. Whoever wants to start first, feel free to jump in.
I'll go first. I think that for me, when I initially had the vision for what I wanted to do, which was to showcase the beauty of Africa to people around the world. I'm originally from Nigeria, so African textiles, prints are such an integral part of my culture. And so I think for me, traditionally, I was so focused on end consumers. So I was really focused on, the marketing to consumers, all the things that had to do with, getting pieces to the end consumers. But I think through my business, I realized that, I really need to be focusing on the actual business owners, right? And so focusing on the vendors, the designers, right? Because they're such an integral part of the supply chain. And so really making sure that, we were building out services and resources, whether it was personal or business, right? Those were the kinds of services that we realized were really integral to what was needed to grow the industry. So I think when I realized that was a big aha moment for me. Sorry. Yeah, I think that really just changed the game and how, we kind of modeled our business model to really focus owners and vendors were truly empowered with the tools they needed to grow and scale successful businesses, like any entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Jihan, what ways did you find yourself maybe potentially needing to pivot?
So, I mean, I think my first major pivot was pivoting into entrepreneurship. So as you mentioned in my bio, I was a magazine editor for almost a decade, completely leave that career field to start a company. So I had been working as a senior editor at Oprah, and I thought I wanted to be like an editor-in-chief one day. Like this was going to be it. I was on my career path. I was doing what I thought I wanted to do. I had a very clear goal. But it was during that time that I saw a lot happening in beauty tech. And everybody wanted to get their new product, their new company, whatever it was, featured in the magazine. So I often had like a front row seat to every new, launch that was happening. And it was during that time that I saw so much happening with beauty tech, and so much of it was ignoring women that looked like me. And that didn't make sense because I was spending so much money on my hair. Everybody I knew was spending so much money on their beauty and hair care routines. And still we were being overlooked from a beauty tech perspective in terms of having the tech tools that we wanted to have a seamless beauty experience where we felt like we could walk in, get our hair done, have a great experience, and walk out, look beautiful and go on about our lives, right? And so I ultimately made the leap and the pivot to say, okay, I'm going to leave what I've been doing and what I thought I wanted to do forever to create this business solely because I wanted to solve a problem that I saw in the marketplace. And that was, something that was affecting me personally. Like I wanted a better beauty experience, and I knew other women did too. So for me, that was probably the first major pivot I ever made to say, I'm on this, at the time felt like a very secure, safe path. And now I'm going to pivot and do something completely different. And ultimately for me, it was certainly the right decision. Feel very much aligned with, creating a company for women that look like me, and building a beauty experience for Black women is incredibly important to me. So being able to do that now feels like a real gift and a blessing, every day to be doing this. So that was certainly, I would say, my biggest initial pivot, getting into entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. I love it that you ladies combined can put us together and help us create a whole look. We have the fashions, we have the beauty, the hair. I love it. So this past March, when you realized the impact of COVID, at whatever point you did, because I think sort of like realizing the impact happened at different points for different people, what did you think was going to happen with your business, and what steps did you take to sort of maybe start pivoting in your business to accommodate the climate that we were in with the pandemic and with COVID-19? Or did you take any steps?
You want to go first?
Sure. I can say that for me, I was certainly not expecting it to be what it turned out to be, right? So I will say when it all started happening, our first email communication to all of the stylists on our platform and to our stylist community at large was, okay, here are some like resources you can use, and here's how you can, tell your clients about how you're going to like keep them safe while they're in the salon. So we were still very much operating with the idea that like you're still going to be working, like you're still going to be able to service clients. Business will still maybe change a little, but will still look as how, it's looked before.
Right.
That couldn't have been further from the truth, right? Like a few weeks later, it was like, nope, every salon business, in the country is no longer able to take any clients. So I can definitely say our initial steps, we were dealing with the information we had, but it continued to change so quickly in those early days. And I just remember thinking back, like, God, that first email seems now so naive, right? Like, sure, you're going to be able to like sanitize your space and still be able to work. And that was not the case at all. But ultimately, what we did is when, salons did have to close, is we went really deep very quickly on supporting our stylist community. And so figuring out what they needed, it was unprecedented for any business to not be able to make revenue with no notice, right? So for a lot of them and a lot of our stylist partners, they didn't have any, time to say like, okay, here's how I'm going to prepare for something like this. No one did. So we really went deep on how can we support them? What are the resources we can provide to them now to help them weather this time? And ultimately where we ended up moving towards was providing virtual hair consultations. So the ability for stylists to still connect with their clients in a virtual way, especially as we saw that this was continuing. Because I think even in the beginning, a lot of women, especially clients, I think said, oh, I can wait this out, right? Like I can maybe, it's going to be a couple weeks, I can wait and then get my hair done. But of course, weeks turned into months and then you're like, I got to do my own hair. So let me figure this out. We had to continually, I would say, adjust to the reality of, as this goes longer, the client's needs change, the stylist needs change, and being consistently nimble at every step of this journey. And we can talk more about the virtual appointments, I think maybe later in the call in this conversation, but that was where we went, just complete focus on how do we support our stylists. And by supporting them, as a function of supporting them, we also support clients who have, hair needs while they're at home.
Mm-hmm. Kelechi, how do you find that you were able to pivot in your business?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I think, like we said, we didn't know what to expect, right? I mean, I think when we first heard about COVID, it sounded so far away. It didn't sound like, it was something that would hit so close to home and be so impactful, right? And so, so for many of the brands that I work with, fashion brands, right, they sell online. And so I think that what me and my clients were worried about was, how this would affect, people buying, commodities or luxury items, right? And so, and I think that, and then of course, we're seeing all the numbers with unemployment, right? All the people that were losing their jobs, right? And so, more and more people didn't have disposable income to buy $80 dresses, right? And then it's like, where were you going anyway, right? Like, who's buying, dresses? Where are you going? So I think I realized two really interesting things, right? I think that for some of my events, especially the new clients who didn't have their own consumer base, they had to get really creative, right? And so I know early during the COVID, masks were really popular, right? And so, but there was a lot of debate on whether if you sold a mask, you were profiting off a pandemic, or people needed masks. There's all of this debate and all this back and forth. But at the end, it was people realized that COVID is here. We have to live with it, right? And we have to learn to live around it. We can't are we gonna sit in our homes all day, every day and do nothing? No, right? We have to get sunshine, right? We have to go to the grocery store. We have to do different things. So in that respect, there was a market there, right? That's what my clients realized. But then I think what we also realized is that what we thought would be a negative in terms of sales declining, sales actually increased, right? Because everybody was at home, everybody was online, right? So they were shopping more. I think that for the most part, people were very optimistic that this was going to be over soon, right? At least by the summer, even though it's summer now, and we're still kind of in the midst of it. People were like, yeah, I mean, this is still cute. I still want to buy this, right? And, and let's go. And so I think that it actually, for many of my clients, ended up being a really interesting opportunity to really understand who their consumers were, really getting into the nitty gritty around how they think, right? Their psychology, what they did on a day-to-day. And so that I found really, really, really interesting. And I think it, if anything, really set up, many of my clients for success into what's coming now into the summer, right? Because now they have all this momentum, right, from COVID. And I think that because of, what happened or what's happening with COVID and how that's going to affect the retail industry, right? It's kind of pushing more e-commerce, right? More and more now is happening with e-commerce. We already knew that e-commerce was, just ways ahead when it came to retail, but now it's getting even further, right? So now it's we're realizing more and more what are the trends that need to be listened to in the e-commerce industry, and how do we leverage that for, not just the entrepreneurs or the clients that I'm working with, right? But how we can take those learning lessons and making sure that other amazing designers can also leverage that as well, right? And so, so I think that for me and my business, right, I think, it just really taught me the importance of, putting together strong content, putting together all these online resources, putting together information that could be leveraged in a digital way and spreading it amongst different entrepreneurs. And so yeah, I've definitely I think you just learned a lot who our end consumers are, who the entrepreneurs are. Of course, there are lots of new entrepreneurs who are springing up, right? Which has been great for my business and being able to support them in their growth. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, all things withstanding, we've really been able to take, what, has been negative, and really turn it around into something that's great for women of color entrepreneurs in general.
So Jihan, we know how you have pivoted since COVID, but we also know that the beauty industry as a whole has been deeply affected by, everything that's been happening in terms of, like Kelechi was just saying, sales declining, all things like that because of brick and mortar opportunities. So specifically for stylists, what opportunities for the stylists that you work with within your business, what opportunities have you found within the industry, maybe as a result of COVID-19? And if I'm not mistaken, you have a new partnership maybe that you can talk to us a little bit about?
Sure, definitely. So one of the things that we, as I mentioned before, that we hit on was virtual appointments. And this was a new behavior for everyone, right? Some people had done maybe consultations like that before, but very rarely. This was not a staple of the beauty industry. But we noticed that, of course, that was going to become necessary, as we were talking to our community and to our clients. They were having questions about, how do I take care of my hair at home? If I need to trim, if I'm overdue for a relaxer, or if I'm just struggling with a good twist out, how can I get the support I need right now because I can't get into the salon? So we saw a real opportunity there to pivot into the virtual space while salons remain closed. And as a result of doing that, we were able to do an amazing partnership with Unilever. So we partnered with Dove, new Amplified Textures line, Suave, and Shea Moisture to provide free virtual appointments to clients that were sponsored so that the stylists were still able to get paid for every appointment that they did through this partnership, which was amazing, right? Because in that way, we're able to still support the bottom lines of stylists while helping, clients get additional hair care help while they're at home. And that was, we did that it was a 4-week partnership. So that started in mid-May. And the goal was to do, 300 appointments over the course of 4 weeks. It was all new. We were going to just see how it went. We sold out of those 300 appointments in the first week.
Amazing.
So it was such a good indicator of, being able to find a way to pivot in this moment and still provide a lot of value that people wanted. So we actually re-upped. We did another 300 appointments. So in all 600 appointments across some of the stylists in our community over the course of those sold out again in another week. So it was a great success, but also for us, it was just a real learning lesson, of how, when you listen to your customers, when you listen to your vendors and your stylists and your, whoever your partner is, whatever type of business you're running, you can really provide value there. And that's ultimately what we learned, is that we were able to find a solution in what could have been, a really hard time. As you mentioned, salons have been closed. That is when you have a revenue stream in which you have to be touching another person, and then you can't do that for, an unspecified amount of time. You've got to get nimble. You have to start thinking about what your other options are. Other ways that we've seen stylists be able to pivot in this time is through retail. So like Kelechi was saying, the ability to leverage e-com, to leverage online resources to the extent that you can, is really helpful in moments like this. And so having that ability to do that, we also, went really deep on providing those resources. So how can we provide additional business resources to our stylist community? One of the very first things we did when salons closed was did a financial planning webinar. It's like, let's talk, how are you going to handle this right now? How are you going to literally handle maintaining your, your business space when you don't have revenue coming in? And so I think having those conversations very early on was incredibly helpful. But for us, being able to leverage those virtual appointments and be quick to think of a new way to continue to serve the client and still provide a consistent experience that was in line with our mission and values. Our business, we connect women of color to hair salons and stylists. Right. Yes, that's usually in person, but when we had to take that online, our mission didn't change. What we were providing as our value to both customers and the stylists didn't change, just the medium of how we provided the service did. So I think sometimes when you think about, sometimes people think about pivoting as like, oh, I have to go do something completely different. And you don't, you can still stay in line with your initial business goals and your initial vision and just think about offering it in a bit of a different way.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk a bit more about money in a second, but you just made me think of something that I'm sure some people who are watching are curious about. So when you did this partnership with Unilever, was this because of your initiatives and within your company? You went to Unilever, did they come to you? And then how was the profit split? Was it Unilever paying you to be sort of like the conduit to these relationships with the stylist, or did the stylist get paid up front and then have to give your business a portion of the money that they received?
Sure. So it started as a conversation. You know, they came to us wanting to find ways that they could help the community. And for us, because we were already offering the virtual appointments, we already had a way for them to plug right in to our community. So a lot of that ended up just being very organic in the way that it worked. And then the revenue was per appointment. So for us, it was really focused on, for every appointment booked, you know, the stylist would make, it was a $50 value placed on each appointment that the stylist was able to receive. So our main goal through a partnership like this was driving value and revenue directly to our stylist community, less so about, you know, driving revenue to Swivel. It was really focused on how can we keep sustaining our community in some small way, right? Like, you know, this is not going to take, you know, every stylist in the you know, United States, but we wanted to find a way, like, how can we drive that value? And so that was our key goal there. But I think what really helped us was that we already had the technology in place. We were already doing it. It was already working. And so when, you know, it gave us an ability to say, like, okay, we have this offering and now this makes sense from an organic standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So you were able to sort of like think on your feet, put things in place because you had already started being prepared for what the pivot looked like. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Kelechi, as a founder in the e-commerce space that's now shifted to digital marketing, what new opportunities did you find as a result of COVID? I know we sort of touched on some of them, but are there any that maybe we didn't think of that, you know, like maybe online education, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think online education is a great one, right? Because like I said, there are so many new entrepreneurs. Because one thing that I found interesting, many of my clients, they have 9-to-5s, right? So they kind of run their fashion business as a side hustle, you know, until it becomes, you know, profitable enough, you know, to pay them, right? As much as a 9-to-5, right? And so it's funny having conversations with them because, you know, they're working from home and they now have this taste of like what it feels like to actually be able to dedicate more time to your business, right? And so they're starting to get that feeling, you know, that taste of what it really feels like to, like, you know, be able to work from home, you know, throughout the week on your business and have more time for your company. And so many of them don't want to let that go, right? So many of them are like, yeah, I'm not ready to, you know, go back to a 9-to-5. I'm not ready to go back into an office. So many have found refuge in having a community of others who are other entrepreneurs who are going through the same things that they're going right through, right? And so I think that's for so many entrepreneurs, especially when just starting. I know for me, like you go in by yourself, right? And so you're going through all of these motions and, you know, all of these thoughts and fears that, you know, you didn't think anybody else was going through, right? Until you become part of this community. So so many of the entrepreneurs that, you know, I'm working with, you know, are now part, you know, of this community. And, you know, they now feel they have that place where they can go and really feel comfortable talking about, you know, whatever is going on with their business, but they also have the resources, the tools, the networks to be able to take their business to another level. And so so what I'm seeing is that with more entrepreneurs who are starting to feel more comfortable transition, right, from that 9-to-5 to actually full-time entrepreneurship and really put the dedicated time into their business has been amazing, right? I think for me, on a personal level, right, because, you know, for me, it's definitely a personal mission to be able to work with more women of color entrepreneurs and put them in spaces where they truly feel valued, right? I had one client who was telling me a story about after, you know, what happened with George Floyd, you know, she was on a Zoom call, but she works at a law firm. And so she was on a Zoom call and she brought up, you know, George Floyd, and everybody kind of was just like, oof, you know, that doesn't, you know, I don't want to talk about that. It doesn't matter to me. Like that was pretty much the sentiment. Right. And so she's in there, like, as a Black woman, thinking like, you know, this is a group of people that I work with every day right? And you're seeing on the news, right, this, Black man who, is being choked, for 8+ minutes, and that doesn't affect you at all. Right. And we know exactly why it happened. Right. And so, I think that, between, what's happening with COVID, what's happening with, all of, the
racism,
unearthing of, and actually it being brought to a national stage. Right. And then, entrepreneurs who are working in these places realizing that my Black cats could die tomorrow and nobody would even blink twice. Why am I spending, such a large percentage of my life working around these people, right? I should be doing work that's actually truly valuable for for my community, for my family, and for generations to come, right? And so I think that being able to help more entrepreneurs in that transition, right, has been really amazing, right? And seeing more entrepreneurs realize that these are the spaces that they need to be in, right? And how to help them get into those spaces. So yeah, well, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. You just brought up another topic that I think we should really touch on. Within this climate, since you guys are in the beauty space, there's been a lot of companies who are saying publicly that they want to help more and, provide more resources and things of that nature. What have been your experiences in this, I guess, new awakening of acknowledging racism? What have been your experiences as women of color, Black women, business owners in the tech space, in the founder space? Just talk to us a little bit maybe about what your experiences have been and maybe where you see room for improvement. Any thoughts? If you don't have it, fine.
I bet we both have a ton. I mean, that's its own, we can talk about that for hours. I will say that I think we're seeing, what I've been most excited about is seeing what other, Black entrepreneurs have also been putting out into the space. So when you see things like, Pull Up for Change and really taking beauty businesses to task to say reveal your numbers, how many people of color, how many Black women do you have, in leadership positions, how many people do you have on your team, who are the decision makers, and is it a diverse group? I think those types of initiatives are so strong and so smart, because I do think you've got to see the data. Everybody can post a Black square, can say, Black Lives Matter, but what does that actually mean? What does that look like, when you go back to posting, your normal content again, right? How does this stay? So I hope, I hate to be cynical, but, you can only hope, right, that this push for accountability will lead to real change, and that when we come back in 6 months, a year, are those numbers looking different? Have they changed? Are people of color, women of color, Black women in positions of power and leadership? That's what I want to see as well. But I also want to make sure that, I think we're seeing a lot of this too, but I want to make sure that we continue to highlight the small businesses started by Black women who were created to fill these voids, right? We were never we knew about all of this before, right? This isn't anything new to any of us that, we've been out here creating businesses because we were ignored by mainstream beauty companies in so many cases, whether that's beauty brands, product companies, service marketplaces like mine, what Kelechi's doing. Fashion and beauty has consistently ignored the unique hair care needs, beauty needs, and fashion needs of people of color. And so we were already starting these businesses to fill those voids, to solve those problems. And so I hope that in this dialogue, as we take bigger businesses to task, that the smaller companies that actually sprung up as, a part of solving these problems stay a part of that conversation too. So I think that's really important, is that we've been out here solving these problems, filling these voids, and those messages need to be, I think, amplified more so than just saying, what's this big beauty company going to do now? Because I think a lot of us can leverage what smaller startups started by Black and brown women and men have been doing to actually fill these spaces.
Right. Kelechi, real quick, we're winding down on time, but have you thought of any ways with the current climate and racism and people trying to be held accountable more that maybe you can do some things within your business to help you impact your business in a positive way?
I mean, I think the most that we, have been doing and are continue to do is to help women of color really see their power, right? And I think there's so many who have these incredible talents and ideas and visions and don't even realize that, they could start $1 million business. Like, creating $1 million business seems like the most crazy thing in the world, right? But it's like when you just show them that it's possible, right? And then provide them with the resources to, create something that's scalable and sustainable that, can go for generations, right? Then it's like you no longer have to, you now have a place to really for your voice, right? You no longer have to worry about what these big, companies are doing, because it doesn't matter, right? They don't speak to Black women. I mean, I think, like what was said, we're seeing this trend, and, with all trends, they eventually just kind of fade, if we're, being cynical, but, we'll see, right? And I think that at the end of the day, we have to focus on ourselves and worry about ourselves, right? And be our own voices, so.
Yep. Love it. Love it. So quickly, let's talk about money. Actually, we're going to go to Q&A now. Maybe somebody has some questions about money, because we have about 5 minutes for Q&A. So we're going to answer some of these questions that have popped in since we've been talking. The first one is, what are some key questions to ask yourself when pivoting in your business? So maybe prior to pivoting, what's maybe one key question you both feel like you should ask yourself?
I think for me, it's what's your plan, right? I think with my first business, I didn't have a plan. I just was excited and I did it. And, there just wasn't, but I think it's important to really have a plan for, talking about money, how you're going to financially sustain yourself, right? Do you have a savings?
Yeah.
Do you have, a backup plan? I think that, some of those words are not super sexy, when it comes to starting a business, but they're so crucial because, money is mental health, right? We really need to start, making sure that we're talking about, how we're doing, financially, before we go into doing, these, really, big things. So I would say they have a plan.
Jihan, what's one key question?
I was asking myself a lot, especially in reaction to pivoting for COVID, was, am I being reactionary? Am I just reacting to what I'm seeing right now? Or does this actually make sense? Because it was very easy to see everybody was doing an IG live. Everybody was suddenly doing something new. And it was so easy to be like, should I be doing that? Why am I not doing that? Am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Am I falling behind? And I think once I had to say stop, take a deep breath, and then ask yourself, are you just reacting to what everyone else is doing? Or does this actually make sense for you long term? So to Kelechi's statement about having a plan, that fits in there too, right? What is your plan? What's your North Star? Where are you trying to get to? And then I think that helps you just stop reacting to everything you're seeing, especially on social media, because then that can have you pivoting in all the wrong directions.
Agree with you. There was a lot of pivoting or discussion about you should be pivoting, but I said, maybe we need to pause before we pivot, because sometimes you need to take an assessment of what's happening, like you said, and figure out if you're just being reactionary. So another audience question is, when do you know it's the right time to transition from your full-time as a full-time employee to a full-time entrepreneur, especially within a slowed economy and talks of approaching another recession? Kelechi, maybe you want to touch, I think you already sort of started talking about.
Absolutely. I think that, what I mentioned in the first question around having that, entrepreneur, either consumers, and I that you've been running your business. what you can per month, right? So based on your business is going to understand how price or day. And so once you truly think of, you're not really have a choice of, really pay myself, then you're making that leap.
Yeah. Before one final, what procedures have in place to preserve living expenses?
I would say, and what we did as a business, but these are focused on the projection. So, having a case scenario, what's going to happen over the next couple of months showed us is that can go out the window and what's happening. Having different projection cases and what you're going to do in each case can just make you feel incredibly prepared. And I think when you feel really prepared, you're much less likely to be stressed out about it, to have a real understanding of like, okay, how can I make it to this milestone? And if I'm going to run out of money, when's that going to be? What do I have to have coming in? And then also just making sure you're putting yourself in place to take advantage of a lot of resources. So if you do see that like things like this are happening, okay, what kind of grants can you get? Can you get loans? What are the things that are available to you? And then plugging those into your projection. Should you get them? Should you not? Right? If you applied for something, it's a 50-50 chance you're going to get it or you're not going to get it. So having the ability to have those plans in place, I think is really important. But that's what I've really focused on, is like making sure the numbers are incredibly buttoned up, that I understand what those revenue projections look like, because that just gives me such a peace of mind for how to move forward.
Kelechi, anything to add? Or
no, I think that, she said it perfectly, did on all of that.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for spending time with us today. Thank you for all of your insight. It's been extremely helpful, I'm sure. And cheers to pivoting in your business when you actually figure out what needs to be done. So thank you all for joining us for the Perfecting the Pivot and Embracing Change panel. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course. All right, that was such an incredible conversation. Can we just show some love in the comments for our amazing panelists and moderator? Thank you so much to our Perfecting the Pivot panelists for keeping it real on how to pivot and embrace change. It's so important, and I hope that all of you took away some gems from that conversation. Before we head into our next segment, I want to share a little bit about one of the amazing programs that we run here at Digital Undivided for entrepreneurs. So whether you have a new idea or you're seeking to transform your existing business into something more scalable, Digital Undivided has the perfect program that will help you catalyze your genius. So the program is called START, and we're currently accepting applications for cohort 1 of our START program. It's a 3-week virtual program that helps you take your idea from concept to reality using lean startup methodologies. We pair you up with mentors who are successful entrepreneurs. We connect you with other Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs who, eventually become part of your tribe and your community. And we provide you with the tools and resources you need to be successful. So if you want to learn more about START and apply for our program, please visit digitalundivided.com/start. And the link will also be provided in the comment section so you can click through, take a look at the program and decide if it's right for you. There is a small cost associated with the program. It's an incredible program. We have our current program is a pilot that our entrepreneurs who are part of our community are taking right now. And we're just so excited to kick off the first official cohort next month. So you guys have a few weeks if you're interested in participating to sign up and apply. And we really, really encourage you to take advantage of it because it's an incredible program. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to kick off this conversation. I am really passionate about this topic, Black Founders Matter, allyship versus appropriation. And I'm really excited to talk to our amazing panelists about, this topic as well. So with the Black Lives Matter movement front and center in the media, so many organizations are springing to action as allies. And so we wanted to bring together thought leaders to really discuss what allyship looks like
and how organizations can support activism with authenticity versus appropriation. And so we brought together two amazing thought leaders in this space. First, we have Miss Dominique Fluker, who is the lead writer and editor behind the U.S. Glassdoor B2C blog, helping to establish Glassdoor as a thought leader within the recruitment and employment industries due to her consistent and intentional work in promoting diversity and inclusion by profiling and promoting millennial women of color entrepreneurs in business and the arts. Dominique was elevated to a senior contributor at Forbes Women. Welcome, Dominique. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we have Yelitsa Jean Charles, who never had a doll that looked like her growing up. Yelitsa has made it her goal to make sure that no other children feel the way she did about her own appearance growing up. And to date, Yelitsa has raised nearly $500,000 for Healthy Roots dolls, and she's helped thousands of parents provide their children with a product that makes them feel seen and beautiful. Welcome to the conversation, Yelitsa.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to kick this off. I'm incredibly passionate about this topic because I've seen so much happen over the past few weeks, and I just feel like we need to make it really clear what is allyship, what is appropriation, and how we can get to a better place with making sure that companies and organizations are really acting as allies, particularly for Black and Latinx creators, founders, and entrepreneurs. So, ladies, this is a very broad question, but a question that I know so many people are searching for answers to. What does effective allyship look like? What does it look like to you? And anyone jump in.
I'm gonna let Dominique go first.
Okay. I think that question is twofold. For me personally, it means having an advocate, a sponsor, a person that I could trust to have my back in all different types of settings. And especially an ally means to me doing the work in and out of the workplace. So as you know, I write for Glassdoor, and one thing that we always champion is making sure that to highlight workplaces that are fostering diversity and inclusion, but really going beyond that and seeing, okay, what does diversity and inclusion look like in different organizations? And to be an ally in the workplace, for me, my personal definition would be to be an advocate, an amplifier, a protector, and someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves, do the work, and make sure that everyone is included in the conversation, and to check their own biases at the door.
That's a good one.
I definitely agree with the sentiments that Dominique just talked about. For me, when I think about allyship in my own life and with my friends, mentors, businesses that I work with, for me, it's actions, not words. In any aspect of my life, you can say lots of things, but what are you doing? What are you saying when I'm not there? When your peers, when your white peers who, may not know me personally are saying something racist or problematic, or someone is not offering a person of color or discriminating against a person of a different identity and opportunity that they're deserving of because of their identity, what are you saying? And so for me, that to me looks like putting your body where my body is. And seeing, like, with the protests and the demonstrations, it's so different now to see so many white people up in arms about these issues and physically putting themselves in their spaces, to the point where we now have a new term called ally fatigue. Like, you're almost there. We're getting there as allies, but we need you to keep up that work. And so the conversations that you're having when I'm not there, when there aren't people there to check you, like, you are embodying that in your day-to-day life. So that's what being an ally looks like to me.
That's awesome. And it's so interesting. I hadn't heard that phrase yet, ally fatigue. But this terminology, all these phrases are evolving with time, and things are moving so quickly. So I want to talk specifically about, Blackout Tuesday that happened a few weeks ago. We saw so many brands kind of affirm their allyship with the Black community and with the Black Lives Matter movement by posting a Black square on their Instagram. And what I see too often is that acts of social media activism simply, become the latest fad. And, they really take a turn towards appropriation because it doesn't always come from a genuine place. And a lot of companies, unfortunately, use this movement as a way to garner additional support for their brands and to see, it's performative, right? So I want to ask you ladies, after the social media posts are done, what's the next actionable step that these companies should be taking to really show that they're allies beyond doing the Black Square, beyond posting about Black Lives Matter, sending an email or posting a statement? What is of color and entrepreneurs?
It's been an interesting time with all the things that are going on with the demonstrations and the conversations that companies are having. I love seeing the social media activism, but I hate that so much of it stays on social media. And so for these businesses, what's really important for us to see is you putting those actions behind your words and more specifically supporting the Black community. And I've personally seen that with my own business, with people amplifying us, people amplifying the businesses of my friends and purchasing and recognizing you shouldn't be buying Black. These are quality businesses to support them with your money, recognizing and redistributing that wealth. I actually said something on Twitter that might have been kind of radical, but one thing that I think would be interesting to see businesses do is giving equity to the Black community. Give us equity in your companies.
Wow. That's
if we're really talking, often oppressed in this country because we don't have access to those things that you guys have. So if you created a trust of capital dedicated to the Black community, to nonprofits, what would that impact be?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And it really ties back to, our vision at Digital Undivided is a world where women of color own their work. And that ownership piece is so important. So I love that suggestion around, equity and ownership. That's the only way we're going to progress and really be free, right? So I love that. Thanks, Yelitsa. Dominique, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, from a corporate perspective, I think it's important for, yes, companies to show their support on social because it does have legs and it can provide an impact. So I don't want to downplay their efforts there, but also showing their diversity and inclusion numbers, really digging deep and saying, hey, these are our diversity and inclusion numbers. We have work to do. Showing accountability from a C-suite perspective could help as well. And then also making sure that they are diversifying their organizations, starting with their executive leadership, because I think that way it could trickle down to manager entry-level positions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen a lot of that, a lot of, people, customers really calling these companies to the mat and asking like, who in your C-suite, who in your leadership is a person of color, who's making these decisions? And it's unfortunate that there aren't many of us, particularly not women of color. And so I love that there is some level of accountability now. And my hope is that more of these companies and organizations prioritize being public about that information and making active changes.
And
So
also engaging your employees throughout the year, not just for Juneteenth or just putting a whole heap of money into the Black Lives Matter movement. It's important and really imperative for companies to take a step back and think, what can we do holistically for the Black community all year round so it does feel authentic and intentional and not performative. And I think that's where the Black community is finding issue with the social media movement because or just donating in general. We are happy, we take everything in stride and are grateful, but we do want to see efforts go year round. And I think we deserve that.
Absolutely. It shouldn't be just for this time. And I would even go to say that it shouldn't be just the check that you're writing. There should be action behind that, because it feels a little bit like when you are just writing a check to a charity that you're putting the onus on another organization to do the work when it should be twofold. So I love that.
And when I say engaging employees in the corporate space, I mean really pouring into their ERG groups. If there isn't an ERG group at these organizations, tech companies or financial companies or whatever have you, create one. Listen to the employees, listen to Black women at all costs, and then try to make your way and educate your own selves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Yelitsa, I want to ask you a specific question. Really often we see that instead of companies partnering up with Black creators and entrepreneurs, they co-opt or try to recreate their own products or initiatives. And you recently worked with a corporation that chose to partner with you on one of their initiatives, P&G and their My Black is Beautiful campaign. I was actually one of the influencers that was gifted your doll for my daughter over the holiday. And when I opened the package, I got so excited. Like tears were welling up in my eyes. One, because I, have known you personally over the years and how hard you've worked to build up your company. But two, it really felt like here's this company that like sees us and understands how important it is to support our work and support our creators. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about, how that came about and really how it helped your company from a business perspective to be able to do that partnership.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is that it's so unfortunate that companies so rarely do that, where they see businesses doing the kind of work that they want to do within the community, but instead of working with them, they just, steal their ideas. And I know most recently I can think of, do you know Amina from Studio Mucci? She's having issues where people are like not paying her for literally using her made that look like her, but she's not getting paid. And so it's like, if we want to value Black people, we have to actually show them the value that we're putting into them financially. And My Black is Beautiful is a brand that I've been following for years and that has personally invested in the community, as an influencer from Procter & Gamble. And so Healthy Results was super early in our journey, and we were looking for brands to work with. And we had previously worked with, Shea Moisture and Cantu and all these other brands that gave us products to provide children because they saw the opportunity to educate and empower young girls to love their hair. And My Black is Beautiful was just another avenue to do that. So they found us through local press, and they loved the doll, and I had a chance to talk to them about it. And they wanted to not only, promote their brand, but also invest in the community, because that's what Healthy Results is about, is providing children with not only products that look like them, but the long-term impact that will have on their self-esteem. And I know you know that as a mother, and we all know the importance of seeing products that look like you in media and on the toy shelves, and being able to find yourself out there in the world. So that helped amplify us. We were able to partner with that brand. It helped to put us on the scene on social for the holiday season. Obviously, you got a doll. Lots of people got dolls, and it showed that our brand is not just about selling a toy, but our overall mission of making sure no one feels less than because of the texture of their hair or the color of their skin. And more opportunities like that, like sharing your platform. I remember there were influencers who were sharing like with Unique Gibson and other, like they took their large platforms to amplify Black voices. And by doing that, you're giving them the eyeballs, you're giving them the engagement, you're giving them the opportunity. If more companies did that work, we would see more longstanding Black-owned businesses existing.
Absolutely. Agree 100%. So I want to kick it over to Dominique, because you have really dedicated your power as a journalist to amplifying the stories of women of color entrepreneurs. And lately, we've seen so many media publications that are now focusing on amplifying Black voices. So I want to ask you, like, what changes do you think need to take place in the media industry? And how can we make this an ongoing staple in the media and not just a current trend? Because, you've been doing this. This is the work that you've been doing. So how can we make changes?
Yes, I've been out here doing this work. So I admit it was a bit frustrating these past couple of weeks to these finally, or media brands, and pull up and show up for Black, or specifically women, when myself at Forbes Women have been doing 2.5 years. Black Enterprise does it consistently. I think it's really about awareness, and then also for who don't look like me, or to be honest, it's mostly writers in this, and at really has to do some digging and figure out why they aren't covering, or why when it's only for Black only for kind of we need to atone for them. And it's not, so I do feel the landscape has some work that they do themselves. I think that's awareness. It's also in Black women entrepreneurs. I get inundated with the time, and I truly do feel guilty cover at Black women who really mirror and face, but there's one contributor and a handful of Black women that work is, and editors, contributors will take it upon Apple research. And when I pitching as well to brands, I'm in their DM, in their inbox, and just keeping up with Black news and that they need to follow. And I feel like trend with regular as a whole, always in tune with what's needed from a business perspective would do community, and to take stress and pressure off of needing to cover Black entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Even venture to say them this is like a story of Black female entrepreneur or Black news. It's just news. It's just a story about an entrepreneur. You know,
all the time. So sometimes I'm pigeonholed into only covering Black women because I cover them all the time. And so people think of me as just a Black journalist that writes for Forbes Women. And my intention is to cover stories that haven't been heard before. And that's why I started at Forbes Women. And I think that's afforded me a lot of opportunities to then talk to celebrities. But when I did start at Forbes Women, it was just to highlight brand new breakout entrepreneurs, Black women, period. That was my goal. And I still always have to check myself to make sure that I'm laddering back to that goal. But it's really only about 3 of us or 4 of us at Forbes Women that are doing that. And you know that. So we'll just keep holding the torch and inspiring others to do the same.
You guys know what's kind of happening right now? It's like people are discovering that Black people are people. You know, and we do things to be Black.
Right. We're people too. It's crazy.
We're not a monolith. Like, we are all different type of women with different perspectives. And skin color doesn't mean we all agree on the same things or have perspectives. And I think that's what I'm trying to show for my work at Forbes Women, that we are so dynamic and interconnected. And with our entrepreneurship behind that is a story that a woman like Yelitsa have decided to commit themselves to. It's really telling their story. One thing that was so satisfying is it really hasn't been done at Forbes Women in a consistent way before. So I'm very clear. Only cover women of color. I get tons of different pictures all the time. I love every woman's entrepreneurship story, but do prioritize Black women specifically.
Awesome. So, ladies, as a result of the current social climate, you know, there are so many women of color that are being sought out for partnerships, as well as thought leadership, right? Yelitsa, I know one of your posts recently went viral, and Dominique, you're a journalist who does this work day in and day out. How do you guys decipher between genuine versus tokenistic opportunities. How are you determining when it's allyship versus appropriation, and when you should say yes and pass on the opportunity?
That's a really good question. For me, again, it's a little bit different because I still have a 9 to 5, right? So I'm juggling being an entrepreneur, I guess, with writing for Forbes women in other media outlets and maintaining my 9 to 5 role. And for me, I want to take opportunities that feel genuine to who I am as a person, and to go back to my statement, which is to help women of color. So I take opportunities that would be amplifying myself and other women of color, and also working with organizations that I know value women of color. So for me, I'll never put myself in a token situation or a place where I feel uncomfortable, because I can't really speak from the heart, and I don't want to do it. I just really follow my intuition and gut there. But I definitely do my research too, and see has the organizations really honored their commitment to diversity and inclusion, and is it just a buzzword? And we see some actionable results from their commitment to D&I.
Absolutely. So what about you?
So it's a bit of a timely question, because I am in the midst of handling all this inbound interest all of a sudden. Ooh. So for people who don't know, I had a tweet about 2 weeks ago where I was doing the founder and the product, and I just put a photo of me and my doll, and it has nearly, and tons of people saw it. And so now with this influx of interest of people seeing, believe anyone can buy a black doll. Isn't that, yeah. So for me, it's not a challenge, because I've always had my convictions. I've always talked the fact that not all money is good money. The ethics that I want to work with, like, if you are seeing me as an opportunity for you to, even though you could have been doing this work and creating content and products for children of color, to work with you. So I take those conversations and, get a trust, but let me do my saying and like talk to me really about, review the opportunity. How does it mean, and what's the impact it can have? If a made in iteration is reaching out to me, animated series, a brand, opportunity, a longest series that will end, and what will be the impact, and also say your conviction hasn't really been but yeah, you just gotta do, these people are good people.
Did that happen? Did that happen?
The tweet?
No, just that phrase.
It's an idea. We know lots of people.
Yeah, offline. I about that.
Awesome. I love the made. Before we audience question, last question for you. We've seen these seeds of tension in the, whenever that happens, there's really a pressure for organizing or to stay. Can you guys give any of organization active allies? You think got it right? Yelitsa. Dead silent.
I'm with Yelitsa, and I'm in this. So you said when you go off, you see socialism, you see blanketed state. Where is seats? So go right here. I have not. I have not. I think I've done a great collaboration. They're collaborating with groups to statements. So we see more than donation. We need to take some time for, if this is performative, this is unfortunate insight in companies yet. I will, this is not just a deep conversation about taking account. I do feel CEO statement hard with what terms of difference. So the changes that come across, but I don't think we we've really, I think, year round, their come after and next month. And if these protests will die down, not saying that they should at all keep protesting, but we need to see, we need to see what happens after. This is not a media newsworthy buzzword, but we need to see the proof in the pudding, honestly. So I'm not going to cape for any company right now.
100%.
I mean, I feel the same way. I'm not really the type to, applaud a fish for swimming. You should be releasing these statements. The one thing I will say is I will acknowledge that there are a lot more vocal people and people are a lot more comfortable saying Black people and naming the trauma and naming the issues because they know that they have to now. So I will acknowledge that. If I had to pick one particular business that their statement, stood out to me, I will acknowledge Target's comments around, the Target that was burned down and then basically saying like, we can build another one and recognizing that lives are more valuable than property. Mm-hmm. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's so much more to be seen across all these different type of companies. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I'm not going to say I don't have hope. I do, but I really need to see some action because this has been going on for years. And I think it's been amplified that we're in COVID-19 and this is still happening. And then I also want to call out why we need to be aware of the cis people dying. We also need to be aware of Black trans women that are dying. And I would love for companies to put out statements for that community specifically, especially since it's Pride this month. And I haven't seen that. So hopefully we can go with all Black Lives Matter and amend those statements to include those women who have lost their lives to vicious murders.
Absolutely. And it's a really good transition into one of our audience questions. It is Pride Month right now. It's Immigrant Heritage Month. And, the amplification of Black Lives Matter movement is happening at the exact same time. So, what are some ways we can really serve as allies to each other during this time? And we'd love to hear from you guys on, what you think we can do, because you're right. We should all be supporting each other at this moment.
Open your purse.
Open your purse.
Yes.
Put on your combat boots and get out there and march and show up for Black trans women. I've been sick to my stomach, the footage that I've seen, whether it's a murder of them or beating, and it's coming from our cis Black men. So I would say go home, just like the allies have to go home and talk to their parents and their grandparents and whoever have you and their families. And we need to have some conversations at home in the Black community to get this under control. Why is there still a disconnect between communities? It should not be siloed. They are a part of our Black community as well. So I would definitely encourage to donate. There's several Black women trans-led organizations like the Okra Project. She just got featured in Forbes. Shout out to her. And there's several other resources of organizations that you could donate to, but get out there and protest. And if you're not comfortable with protesting, make sure that you are signing petitions and making your voice heard, and be active on social media too. I think people shouldn't downplay the social media activism because there are a lot of people who don't even know these communities are in and out. And if you can amplify your voice on social and reach someone who doesn't know anything about this, that's a way of educating as well. But going beyond social activism, make sure that you're donating and signing those petitions and getting out there if you feel comfortable to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think something that is pivotal right now is people acknowledging that we've seen too much and we know too much to not say anything. And you have to displace yourself. You have to be uncomfortable. Black people, we've already been uncomfortable. We've already had those conversations, but there are things within our own community, like Dominique was saying, all Black Lives Matter. You have to go home and have those conversations because we have to support our trans sisters. We have to support everyone of all identities, and we cannot all be free until we are all actually free. And that's something that I want to see coming out.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. It's important for us to have conversations with our families. It's important the same way you expect, at the Thanksgiving table that your white coworker is going to shout out if there's somebody at the table who's racist. We need to be doing that shouting out as well for, other communities that should be represented. So 100%. I agree with you there. Do you guys have any parting words? I would love to hear from Dominique as someone who works in journalism. If there are other women on here who, are interested in finding ways to amplify, the voices of Black and Latinx women, how can they get into, doing more of that work? And same for you, Yelitsa, if, we have a creator on here, an entrepreneur that wants to explore partnerships and working with effective allies on, creating partnerships, how can we do this work? What advice do you have?
Yeah, from a storytelling perspective, own your narrative, own your story, and get your story out there by all means necessary. Before I started at Forbes Women or Essence, I was a lifestyle blogger wanting to just write long form again. I was a copywriter at a PR agency, and I really needed to ramp up my voice again and find what I was passionate about. So I started a mini blog, and from there it took off and got into someone's hands, the right person's hands. So, I would not downplay your voice. Your voice has power, it has strength, and no one can take your story away from you. So I would start there.
I mean, oddly enough, my advice is basically the same. I went viral after, just doing what I do, which is talk about the work that I love to do. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing this work for almost 6 years.
Right.
And the work, and it has been, there have been results, it has been amplified, it has been shared. But because I was continuing to share my story and tell my story, like a lot, putting myself out there, people were able to amplify it. And so I think right now, what is most important is for people to see the opportunities that they can capitalize on. Like, so many doors are open right now. People are wanting to talk to creators of color. People are wanting to talk to founders of color. There are lists on Twitter of people who are ready to take conversations, linking their calendar. So continue to tell your story and find those opportunities, and people will listen.
Absolutely. Strike while the iron is hot.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, I want to thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate you taking your time out to talk to everyone. I am rooting for all of you. Dominique, I love your stories. I'm always a huge supporter. I will continue to share. And Yelitsa, you already know I love Healthy Roots dolls. And I already have a whole list of people that I need to buy some for for the upcoming season, birthdays, holidays, all of that.
We're doing a donation. So look out for a holiday give back campaign.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. This was a great conversation, and we're able. All right. Thank you so much to the panelists of our allyship panel for sharing their voices and their expertise on the topic of allyship. It's so important right now, and I'm really, really glad that we were able to curate that conversation. Before we go into our last session, I want to tell you a little bit more about the data and research we conduct at Digital Undivided. Our research and data analysis is really how we're changing the narrative for Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs in innovation. You guys know the first step towards creating systems change is having the numbers to show how much progress really needs to be made. So right now, Digital Undivided is currently collecting data for our 2020 Project Diane report, which is releasing later this fall. If you're a business owner who identifies as a Black or Latinx woman, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. So you're going to take the Project Diane survey and tell us about who you are, where you're from, and the business you're running, so that we have as much data as we need to really come out with a report that affects change and creates a real impact. The link will be provided in the comment section. You can also find the survey link for our Project Diane survey on all of our social media pages. We're at Digital Undivided on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and at digitalundiv on Twitter. And we've been promoting it for the past few weeks, so you can easily find out more about the survey and be part of history. It's really, really important for us to make sure that we're capturing as many Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs as possible so that we can tell this story and so that we can push for policy change and push for systems change for women of color in entrepreneurship. So please take the survey. Once you take it, share it with your friends that you know are entrepreneurs so that we can get as many respondents as possible. Thank you so much. Wow, I cannot believe we've almost reached the end of our programming. It's been such an incredible afternoon, and I'm excited for this next panel discussion because it's a conversation that our community really needs to continue. With the trials of a global pandemic and heightened race tensions in America, Black and Latinx founders are really experiencing unique triggers that make entrepreneurship more challenging than ever before. So this upcoming conversation is going to explore the importance of mental health and tips for blocking burnout so founders can thrive as the anchor for their businesses. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our lovely moderator. Valeska Toro is an agile coach and executive coach that specializes in developing leaders and building high-performance teams in startups and Fortune 500 organizations. She was a cohort 2 founder in Digital Undivided's Big Incubator program, and she also served for some time as chief of staff for our organization. She crafted our organization's core values, and she consistently stresses the importance of seeing others at their highest and best. Please welcome Valeska Toro.
Okay, I think we are ready to start. Awesome. This is my first time ever doing something like this, so thanks for your patience to everyone. So today I'm super excited. We have 2 incredible people here with us, 2 amazing women, and I'm super excited to just hear from the 2 of you, learn about you. Our topic for today is mental health and managing burnout, which I know that we can all relate to. So for Christina and for Dr. Oguntoye, I'd love for the 2 of you to introduce yourselves and let the audience know who you are.
Okay. Should I go first?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Rice. I am the founder of OMNoire, which is a social wellness community for Black women and women of color. We are very well known for our retreats that we host around the world. Of course, during COVID, we have pivoted and we have started hosting virtual retreats. And we also have a private members community called Breathe by OMNoire. And I'm happy to be here today. Happy Juneteenth. What a great day to have this summit. So thank you for having me.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Aderonke Oguntoye. I'm a psychiatrist, adult and forensic psychiatrist in New York City. I work with adults. I work both in a hospital setting as well as in a private practice for ambulatory patients, for therapy and medication management. And I'm really excited to be here and participate in this discussion and hopefully share some great insights, and as well wish everyone a happy Juneteenth.
Amazing. Thank you both for being here. And incredible backdrops. You guys, I need to step up my backdrop game. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Valeska. I am an executive coach. I was also a former founder at Digital Undivided. So this is an organization that's very near and dear to my heart. And I'm super excited to have you both. So we know that this is a tough time, right? Overall, the world, with everything that's going on, especially in the US, you know, us at Digital Undivided, we've been trying to do what we can to support our founders, to make sure that they have a safe space to talk about their feelings, talk about what's going on. And just recently, Digital Undivided actually hosted a intimate support circle to support them. And so we wanted to know from the 2 of you, How else do you think that we can be supporting Black and Latinx founders, especially given everything that's going on right now?
Well, I guess I will say that first, there's no one right thing to do. I think that everything is so complicated right now and ever changing and really overwhelming that we have to kind of be flexible with ourselves and our responses to things. I think the fact that you recognize that it is a first step. I think as a business, I think acknowledging it and making resources available, but also respecting people's boundaries. If, for example, they are not in a space where they want to talk about it or they want to process it through work is another thing. And I think that, will respect boundaries. You want to make sure that your inquiries are genuine, and you don't want it to just be like, "Hi, how's everyone doing? Fine, okay, thanks, bye." If it's when it feels genuine, I think people are going to be more likely to be responsive to it.
Well, I agree with Dr. Oguntoye. I hope I said it right. There is no one size fits all approach. I think the best thing that you can do is continue to offer a wealth of resources. And the reason why I say that is because, you have a variety of founders from various backgrounds and interests and needs. And so the best thing you can do is say, we are not trying to fit you in a box in terms of your mental health and what kind of resources we can provide, but we can offer you this. Here are some spaces that you can, find additional mental health resources. I always encourage even just our members is to try as many things as you can, because what self-care looks like to me is going to be different than you. I am a yoga instructor and a meditation instructor. So that is my safe space. That's where I go when I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed. But for someone else, it could be talking to your therapist, or it could be going for a run or a long walk outside, or whatever the case may be. But I think really it's no one size fits all, but here are the resources that we can provide you to continue to support you during this time. And also peer-to-peer support is invaluable. Talking to women who are really going through this whole entire pandemic and civil unrest, and understand how you feel as a founder is going to be invaluable, and offering that kind of support to each other. Maybe even having accountability partners or workout buddies, anything like that. Like I said, will help others with understanding how each one of you all are going through the same thing. We all are. So if we can find support amongst each other, that's going to be invaluable.
I love that. I'm so in agreement. I mean, I think there's sometimes we even judge ourselves on our self-care. like, oh, I'm not doing enough self-care. Like, what am I doing? It even becomes something that we weaponize. So I love that the two of you are talking about how it's just what's personal to you and what's right to you. And there's no judgment behind that.
Absolutely. There's this thing that we call toxic positivity, where, a lot of us, we're on social media and we see a lot of wellness influencers that are talking about, self-care this, self-care that, and love and light and all that stuff. And, not really having those real conversations that I'm suffering to, you're suffering. I understand where you're coming from. And self-care, like you said, is a very personal journey. What it teaches you, what it teaches me, is going to be very different. Maybe in a general sense, it'll teach us what is healthy, what is not, what works for us and what doesn't. But in terms of just this, moment that we're in right now, is really important for us to be honest and genuine about our feelings, but also not judge ourselves if one day we just don't have it. I've actually gone through that this week. I just didn't have it, I had two very trying weeks. I was very busy with work. I've being pulled in many different directions. And so instead of me judging myself for not doing everything that I could for my business, I just surrendered to it and just said, I'm doing the best that I can right now. And if it's rest that I need, if it's stepping away from my computer, if it's stepping away from everything to take care of myself, I'm going to do that.
I think that's such an important point. When we talk about self-care not being one size fits all, that this might not work for this person or that person, you should also recognize that that's true within yourself. That on Monday, this might have been what I needed, or last year, this worked for me. But this year, for some reason, it's not working, and you things that used to relax you or used to energize you, and your body's telling you that's not what it is for me anymore. And so whether it's listening to your body, to, like Christina said, to say, you know, actually you are tired and you need to lay down and you need to rest. I think a lot of times as women of color, we try to beat ourselves up. I need to do more. I have to be more. I have to fix this for that person. This person needs me. And it's like, you know, you need you as well. So you need to take a rest for yourself if you're tired. If your body's telling you something, listen to it. And I think that there's a big difference between taking 1 day or 2 days to rest and taking the bed for 2 whole weeks. And I think that sometimes we think, oh my gosh, if I lay down, I'm not going to be able to get back up. And it's, you know, that's not true. And I think it's also a lot more likely to have to run yourself into the ground if you don't take that break when you need it to in the first place. If you keep pushing yourself past empty, then you are going to knock yourself down for a really long period of time.
I agree. And I'm just going to make one final point. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was maybe about 3 weeks ago, I had a conversation with my therapist, and I told her that I was feeling, you know, some kind of anxiety and some pressure, you know, to do so many things within that particular month. I think it was May that we spoke. And she just asked one simple question, like, who's putting this pressure on you? I'm like, me.
Yep.
You know, you have absolute control over that. So, you know, it was really kind of working through me feeling that I was having all of this external pressure, which I really wasn't. It was really internal. And so I had to define what that was. And so we went through, you know, several different exercises just to kind of figure out, one, where that anxiety was coming from and where I felt that pressure was, but also how to relieve the pressure. I think that's really important to me. And because, you know, when COVID hit, a lot of us, you know, I'm sure founders were feeling this anxiety, like, I have to pivot. I have to figure this out right now. And so that was that pressure that we were putting on ourselves because we felt like the general public or our customers or our clients needed us to show up in a certain way. I couldn't operate for 2 weeks. I just couldn't do it. I work out every day. I couldn't work out. I couldn't think of any, you know, new ways to pivot the business. And so instead of me fighting it, I just surrendered to it. And then when I was ready and started to kind of come out of that pressure I was putting on myself, I started being so creative and launching all these new products. But if I had kept forcing myself, that creativity would have continued to be stifled to that. And understanding and honoring what you need as a founder, as a Black woman, as a woman of color, whatever the case may be. What do I need in this moment to be full, to be peaceful, to take care of myself, my mental health, my physical health, all of that.
I love that. I mean, I think, you know, I'll speak for Latinx culture, but this is a conversation that I never remember having when I was growing up, and it's brand new. And it's something that you kind of have to introduce into your life. And sometimes it's all brand new. You don't know how to do it. And it's even new to our families. Like, I've introduced it to my own mother. I'm like, you have to stop at some point. You keep going and going. And so I'm sure that because this is a new conversation, what advice what are the strategies or the resources that you've provided, maybe a founder that's just stepping into her own self-care journey?
I'll let Dr. Oguntoye take that.
You can start, Christina.
What resources in terms of like with our company with OMNoire or just
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love for you to talk about the work that you do, especially as it relates to this topic, for sure.
And and I'll also start with kind of like my background. I've been an entrepreneur for nearly 20 years, so since I was 21. And so I have gone through different periods of burnout. I've owned 4 different companies. And when I launched OMNoire, I was actually going through a really difficult time in my life. And I started taking yoga. And then from there, I realized there were very few women of color in the space. And so, that's kind of where OMNoire was founded. But had I not kind of really introduced myself ways of self-care, I wouldn't even be here right now in terms of having this company and understanding how to help women heal themselves. And so, in terms of our resources, we offer, of course, wellness retreats, which are not just like group trips, but it's really an opportunity for women to step away from everyday life, to step away from all of the titles that are assigned to us, right? As moms or wives or CEOs or entrepreneurs or any of those things. Those are what are assigned to us. So one of the ways that we encourage, even during our retreats, is really, who are you at the core, right? Instead of, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm this, who are you at the core? Who are you as a spiritual being? And so really when we understand what that part of us is, who we are as a core, then we can start to nurture that part of us. And so our retreats is kind of like really that foundation to start really defining what wellness and self-care means on your own terms, not what it means to me, not what it means to the woman next to you or across from you, but what does it mean on your own terms? Then, of course, with our members community, I started that last year. Luckily, before I even had to pivot, I started it because we had gotten an email from a woman that had asked, "Do you have any online resources for women who cannot attend your retreat?" So immediately that idea came to me, like, we need to bring our audience to women's homes who either, can't afford to attend a retreat or just life circumstances, work, mommyhood, wifehood, whatever, timing of our retreat. So that was another answer, like, how can we do, a more digital version of our retreat? And then we also introduced our women to so many other wellness influencers, therapists and meditation instructors and Reiki. And so that idea, like I mentioned before, is providing all of these resources so you can figure out what works for you.
I love that.
Thank you.
I might have to attend one of these retreats.
I want to attend too. I want to attend.
So, I think that for me, it's in my own personal journey and in my work, I think one led to the other. I'm sure that you guys might realize that there are very few people of color who do what I do. In my medical school, there were 2 other Black students in my class. Neither of them went into mental health. And in general, through my career, I am usually it's quite often that I'm the only Black face that I see with the same degree, So I had to get comfortable going into a space where I would be the only person who looked like me. And the only way to really do that is with confidence. The thing I love the most about psychiatry and what drew me to it, as opposed to going to another field of medicine, is how much psychiatry is provider specific. So much of other parts of medicine is a regimen, it's a routine, it's a plan. Like, if someone has high blood pressure, the first medicine you give is this, the second medicine you give is that, and you just follow an algorithm. But with people, we don't work that way. I can see 10 depressed people in a day, and none of them are the same. None of their depressions look the same. Some of them might not even really look depressed. Some might, have it all put together, and it's until you push a little bit that you find out how much is going on below the surface. And the way that it works and the way that you make a connection with people, I find is me being as genuine as I can be. And I think that's why my patients like me and can relate to me, because they know that I am being real with them. So I had to learn to become comfortable with myself and know that, my brand of doing therapy or treating people is not going to be the same way that Freud did it, because I can know about Freud and I can know Freud's theories, but I'm not, old Jewish man. So I'm not be able to necessarily relate to someone in the same way that he related to someone. Not that one is better or one is worse, but it's just different. And you have to have your own style with it and get comfortable with it. And so me going through that journey of, growing up girl with the weird name and this and that, going into the unpopular field of medicine and, people saying, why would you go into that? Or Black people saying, Black people don't go to therapy, or, going through all of that and being like, well, Black people do go to therapy and we should go to therapy and we can benefit from therapy. And, now is people who come to me are so often saying, oh my God, I was looking for a therapist of color. I've not ever been able to find one. Or even when I'm in the hospital, still now people telling me that I'm their first Black doctor that they've ever had, still now in the 2000s, which is wild to me. So once I was comfortable with myself and going through my own journey, I think it helps me get comfortable with themselves and make it through their own journey. Things that I find personally to help me to recenter myself is I have not been to a group retreat as with the OMNoire, but these are things I do for myself. Some things that were really helpful to me was when I traveled alone for the first time. And it's funny because, you can, but traveling alone is just completely different. Taking yourself out of your home area and going somewhere completely different to you and sorting it out. When you're traveling by yourself, you get to turn off so much outside noise.
Yeah.
And you get to really decide in your own situation. So you get to decide, what do I want to do today? When you travel with other people, you call them, oh, you want to go to breakfast? You want to go to lunch? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go see this? You want to go see that? Nobody to ask. So you ask yourself, what do I feel like today? Do I feel like getting up early and walking through the city? Do I feel like taking a leisurely day and spending it in the hotel? So, and at those times, that's when you get to turn off all the outside noise. And I think that in this time home with this, with COVID, I think it's been a little bit, I think at times we've all gotten restless, kind of being stuck. But I think that I've also encouraged people to use this unstructured time to work on things that you yourself are passionate about. As Christina said, even if it takes a while to adjust to what is going on, but once you do adjust, it does release some of that. You start releasing that creative space that you might not have had if everything would have been as it was. So
yeah. What I'm really getting as like the key takeaway from both conversations is that there's no one size fits all. It's your own personal journey, and you get to choose what works for you, and that it's okay. It's okay to ask for help.
I respond to the audience question?
Yeah, I'd love to go to the audience questions. I'm gonna read them out. The first question we have is, as an entrepreneur without a team to support me, sometimes I feel like I can't afford to take a day off, especially with the vacation of pulling all-nighters to work on my business. How can I cope with all of the guilt of taking time to take a break?
I love that question.
Oh, I know this all too well. You know, as I mentioned before, like I have experienced burnout at numerous times throughout my career and as my entrepreneurial career. And, you know, not taking a break is the fastest way to get to burnout, you know. And so, you know, the guilt, you know, you just have to surrender to that, like understand what it is, recognize it. Where is it coming from? Is it, you know, is that pressure to do all-nighters? Is it coming from you? Is it coming from external sources? Is it coming from clients? Or is it really an illusion, right? Have you really made up this pressure because you feel like it's something you should be doing versus something that you need to do for your business? You know, I have, like I said, I went through that this week. I have been going hard for the last 2-3 months since, you know, COVID, and I was able to kind of turn that switch and start pivoting and launching new products. And this week, it really just hit me that I needed to rest. And even though there were things that were, you know, on my deadline plate, I still have absolute control over them. If I decided to, you know, I was going to launch something next week, I'm going to launch it 2 more weeks from now, you know, and I have the ability and the power as an entrepreneur, as a founder, to make those decisions. And the reason why, for me, it feels right because I need time and I need time to rest and I need time to reset. And so I would say, you know, there's no right or wrong answer or way to cope with the guilt besides recognizing what it is and working through it in a way that you can answer where is that guilt coming from, while also listening to your body. And when it's time to rest, that you rest, because if you don't, that burnout is real. That burnout can last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. For me, it literally lasted almost a year. And my business, my previous business before OMNoire, suffered because of that. And, you know, although I forced myself through it, it wasn't the healthiest way to do it. And I told myself and I promised myself that I would not run myself into the ground as a founder anymore. So when I take days off, I know that it is for me and I have every right and every need to do that.
Amazing. We have another question that I love. What do you think are some of the most effective ways to change the conversation around mental health in the Black and Latinx community and help others feel supported?
I think that the conversation is starting to change. I think people are, it starts by being a lot more open about it. There's a lot to think who are in therapy, recognizing that because you're in therapy doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. And, you know, maybe some people need to realize that, you know, maybe the behaviors you're exhibiting are really toxic, and it's because you aren't, you know, dealing with the things that are happening with you. So I think taking the stigma out of it is doing things like this, like talking about it, being open about the fact that people are in therapy. I think it's helpful to realize that there are more providers of color who are here that can maybe talk with you from a different perspective, and also realizing that because you're in therapy doesn't mean that now have to be on medication and this and that and that and that. It doesn't mean anything other than you are addressing a mental it's really just the same as what Christina was saying, that it's about listening to what your body is saying or what you need, you know?
And I also think that we have to really understand that our mental health as Black women and Latinx and founders, entrepreneurs, all of that is really a matter of life and death. You know, stress-related illnesses are massive in the Black community. Even from women, Black women. When I was going through my yoga training, I will never forget that we had a guest meditation instructor. And one thing she said, particularly for Black women and women of color, is that we hold our emotions in and we push them down. And so all of those toxic emotions sit in our stomachs. And with them having nowhere to go, they start into different diseases, whether it's breast cancer or reproductive issues, our cycles, things like that. And once I really understood that, I have made it a point to put my well-being first. A lot of times what we do is we put everything else first, our business, our families, everything else, and then our well-being is something that we'll get to when we get to. But what if we start to make our self-care very radical, where it is the first thing that we think of? And that thing, whatever it is, however you define it, is the one thing that is your non-negotiable. And then everything else falls into play, because when you're healthy, your business is healthy, your families are healthy, everything else is healthy, but you have to first put that at the forefront of everything that you do. And then what it does is it teaches you boundaries. So whenever, and I've learned that, I've learned, I used to, people would come in my DM, they would send me, I would have to answer it all. I would have to be present for everyone else. And I finally had to just start to declare that this is a boundary. Please do not DM me. Please do not do this, and being okay with that. And the moment that I did it and I set that boundary, what I was doing was honoring myself. And when you're not honoring yourself. So that is one thing that we have to put first, is our mental health, because it literally is women, and so if you think about that, then it's like, okay, that guilt that I feel as an entrepreneur for not taking a day off, I don't have that anymore, because I know that it is essential to my mental health.
I just want to make one point about the setting the boundaries and why that's so important. And one thing about setting, it's one thing to set a boundary, it's another thing to actually maintain that boundary. For example, if Christina says, I don't reach out to me in my DMs, but then when someone DMs to her, she responds, then she's violating that boundary that she set for herself. And so if you have to honor your boundary and respect your boundary if you want people to respect those boundaries as well. And I think that it goes back to the original point about forcing yourself to stay up and do these all-nighters and all that. It's like, if you told yourself, if you know that you're someone who needs 6 hours of sleep a night, then you need to get the 6 hours of sleep at night, because you're going to be a basket case tomorrow. There's a certain thing called diminishing returns. That's the concept of diminishing returns, when what you're putting in, you're not getting anything out of it. I'm not someone who can pull all-nighters. At a certain point, I'm tired. There's no coffee, no nothing. I need to go to sleep, because after a while, then I'm just like typing nonsense on the computer or having to reread the same times. And it's like, why am I punishing myself and making myself stay up to where I'm not doing anything productive anymore? I might as well just go to sleep take a nap for a few hours where I can actually come back refreshed and focus on it. And that's what boundaries are, is giving yourself space to recharge, to get back at the problem refreshed, where you can actually be productive this time.
Amazing.
Is you have boundaries for other people, but you also have to have boundaries for yourself. And so that's what Dr. Oguntoye is saying, is that you also have to have your own personal boundaries with you. And that is, if you have a cutoff time for work, you have to honor that, because if you continue to violate that, you'll continue to violate that, and then all of those things start to blend in together. And so one, even if you have to write it down, these are things over the next 21 days that I'm going to do to honor my boundaries that I set for other people with myself. Then challenge yourself to do that, and you'll recognize that those boundaries actually feel good. Oh, I see. It's
amazing. So I want to quickly acknowledge the two of you. Thank you so much for your time here. Thank you for being advocates for mental health, for being trailblazers, Really, this is a new conversation for a lot of us, and it's an important one. And I know for a fact that you're making such a difference in so many people's lives and everyone in the audience today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Amazing.
Wow, it is hard to believe we've officially come to the end of our Undivided We Rise Summit. This has been such an incredible afternoon. Huge thank you to our amazing panelists and moderators for facilitating such awesome conversations. Thank you to you all for participating, for leaving comments, for telling us, what you want to hear, and for just contributing to the overall conversation. On behalf of the entire team at Digital Undivided, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. I honestly can't imagine a better way to celebrate Juneteenth than celebrating and empowering all of you who are in attendance today. Be sure to look out for a follow-up email from us with more information about all the programs and initiatives we shared today. As I mentioned before, if you want to support Digital Undivided's work, you can do so by heading to digitalundivided.com/donate. Please enjoy the rest of your week, and we cannot wait to come together with you again for our next summit. And just check your email. We'll be sending more information out about our amazing programs, our initiatives, and upcoming events. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend.